to Inside the Recording Studio. I am Jody Whitesides, and with me, as always, is Mr. Chris Hellstrom. How are you today, Chris?
I'm doing great. This is actually our anniversary.
It is. This is the anniversary episode, and just because it feels like the kind of birthday and special event that it should be, we have a special guest with us today, and that is Mr. George Leger the third. How are you, George?
I'm doing really, really good this morning. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great.
Very cool. It's good to have you with us, George. We're going to poke your brain a little bit and ask you some questions and find out, or for our listeners to find out about what you are about and what you've done, and hopefully have some fun and learn a few things during the way.
Cool. Yes.
I'm very excited.
Yes. And I just want to also quickly point out that there's going to be a special announcement in the middle of this where we normally have our sponsorship information going on. So pay attention, please. Anyway, to get started, George, what is your background in music recording?
Oh, boy. It's actually a lot of different things. I started out when I was really young, recording and trying to make sounds on tape decks, reel-to-reel tape decks, sound on sound. Me and my brother used to play around with that kind of technology. So, I mean, from the time I can remember, I was making music and playing with audio and playing with sound. And that just evolved from the sound on sound stuff to being in bands, to being in bands in school. And then eventually somebody told me about recording school, and that was the beginning of the end of my life.
The beginning of the end of your life. That's kind of a scary thought.
Well, no, because since then it's been all about the music business. And I mean, literally, it was such a shift in how my life path went. It was really, really unbelievable. I mean, you know, as I said before when we were talking, I had this life on a nude beach in Vancouver where I was out there enjoying the sun all summer long and you know, still doing music and stuff. But I mean, that's what I was, just a beach bum. And one of my friends told me about recording school, that there was a recording school called the Institute of Communication Arts in Vancouver. And I couldn't believe it. A school to record for me was like every dream I had ever had come true. And ironically, going to school was just like that for me. I loved it. I wish I'd had more money. That was the one thing I didn't have, was cash. So
don't we all?
You know, I went to school, but I had to drop out because I just couldn't afford to continue to go and support myself at the same time. I didn't have any extra funding that I needed. So, but I did get enough to get started and take all those crazy ideas when I was a kid. And then once I got out of school, started up my own studio. And that offered a whole bunch of other opportunities to do things like beta testing. You know, it was really, when I started recording, we didn't have MIDI technology. It didn't exist yet.
You are a dinosaur.
Yeah, I sure am. It was really, I mean, I remember trying to do tempo maps with the SMPTE reader from Roland, where we had to take this stupid box and we had to program in all of our tempo mapping. And then we had to run that into our Roland 808 drum machine just to have everything synchronize. And this is pre-MIDI.
Oof.
But just pre-MIDI. So it was right as technology was shifting. And that was a very good thing, a very fortunate thing for me, because I got involved with one company testing one of the first multi-port MIDI interfaces that came out. And it was a failure. It never got released, but the company ended up going on to develop the Radar, which was a multi-track direct-to-hard disk recording system.
I remember that.
Still out.
I actually know somebody that owned a Radar in a studio in LA. So I am familiar with that device. That's interesting that they went from MIDI over to Radar technology.
Yeah. So what timeline are we talking about, George, here? Now I'm guessing we're early 80s.
Early 80s in the recording stuff. Yeah. When I was 22. So that would have been 83.
Okay.
83 when I went to school, 84 when I started up going full time in the recording industry and started up my own studio.
Right. Okay. So I want to jump back a little bit. There was a lot of information there, but I want to go back to when you said that you started from a passion of just recording and sound on sound, that type of thing. Do you remember what it was about that process that was so appealing to you that made you just sort of fall in love with it, for one of our better friends?
Because you could arrange. I could arrange parts. I could play me playing guitar, then I could play me playing bass, and I could play me playing drums, because I'm a multi-instrumentalist, which is really fortunate for me.
The true Renaissance man.
Yeah, of sorts. And so it was, for me, that was the appeal of it. I didn't need to have anybody else to be involved, even though my brother was involved, Michael, who, you know, I loved. We were the proverbial brothers in bands and stuff through all of our youths. So,
Right.
Sweet.
What about
it was Michael and I playing in multi-track recording. The ability to be able to record myself is doing as many different facets of a recording as I wanted to.
right? What about sort of early musical influences at that point? Were you, because I know you're at least
Frank Zappa.
Zappa?
Big
Yeah.
time Zappa. I heard Frank Zappa when I was 11 years old, and
The world was never the same ever again.
no, it was not. For me, it wasn't. There was something about his music that was obviously so different from everybody else's. And I mean, honestly, I was even too young to understand what I was listening to. But
Right.
I guess it was like him with Edgar Varese and his love of Edgar Varese's music. For me, it was Frank Zappa's music. When I first heard it, I was just a little kid, and there was something about it that sounded right.
Okay.
Just perfect right. I loved it. It was funny. It was interesting. It was different than everybody else, but it made sense to me. Same thing with Prince. When Prince came around when I was 18 or 19. And Dirty Mind was, I mean, I'd heard Prince's first two records, but Dirty Mind for me was the record that stood out as the one that was like, what is this I'm hearing? For the first time ever, I heard what I consider music. And eventually everybody else would come to hear it too. 3 albums later, he would come out with Purple Rain and become a superstar.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. You started a studio up in Canada, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And
The first one was George's Place. How did it go? George's Place moved around. Initially, it started in my bedroom. And then it moved into a facility with the Pacific Songwriters Association. And what I used to do was do songwriters demos. So for $50, I would do your song. So you'd come in and you'd sing me your song, and I would do the drums and bass usually, and maybe some guitar. And then I'd hire a studio musician who you'd pay for. And they would come in and they would add some extra guitars, maybe a steel guitar, and then I'd hire a vocalist and they'd come in. So for your $200 demo, you'd end up with a really, really good high quality demo. That would take my day up, and I'd hire 2 of my friends to come and do recordings with me. So that's kind of how I got started doing regular recording work and got some chops up. Because I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning. I mean, I had recording school behind me, which was really awesome, because at least I knew how to mic a voice and, you know, how to work a compressor and what an EQ did, and, you know, reverbs and delays and, you know, the basics of processing. You know, you learned all that stuff in school. So it was nice to have that under my belt, even when I only had an 8-track tape deck.
sure.
Because I started out with a Fostex 8-track, then I had a Fostex 16-track, E16, and then G16. And then big MIDI rig. By the time I stopped my rig in Vancouver, that had become, it went from George's Place, which was an 8-track, to Utopia Parkway, which were 2 studios. We had 32 channels of ADAT in one room with Alan and Heath console that was run by my partner at the time, John Shep. Great guy, amazing recording engineer, man. This guy, I still don't know why he never went on to become a bigger superstar. He did engineer one of the biggest albums, independent albums in our studio of all time in Canada. And John was a great guy. So John was my partner. He was in one room. I had a Pro Tools rig in the other room. So we were running a state-of-the-art Pro Tools 8-channel rig. This is way back as well. We also were the world test site for the Soundcraft DC2000 automated console. We also did the PC MIDI board. That was a whole other thing that we had. So we ended up having this state-of-the-art automated console Soundcraft sounded fantastic. But it was alpha, so it was a bad idea. Never put an alpha in a functioning recording studio. It's a bad idea.
What did, just so people know why it's a bad idea. Why is it a bad idea, George?
Well, because they would do things like one day they would send you an operating system upgrade disk and you'd pop it in and you'd run it, and then your fader math would be different. So your fader would be, if you did a fader roll from one level to another level, it would be different on one day to the next day because the math had changed because they were trying to get the fader linearity correct.
So this is kind of like modern day like software updates. It's like, don't ever update in the middle of a project is what they say.
Right, but there's no way because we were literally an alpha test site. So we had one of the only 2 boards in the world of this big, beautiful, I mean, it was $32,000 recording console. Nice. So we weren't messing around, right? This was a real console.
So essentially you went from being like the modern day equivalent of Fiverr from your bedroom to this full-blown wild studio using state-of-the-art gear that was being tested as you were doing it and creating problems and headaches at that point.
Yep. And we were also running, we had 4 ADATs. So think about that. You're running 4 ADATs. That's, so we had that going. We also had a video room going. So we had an Avid Media Composer that was also broken when we bought it. Oh my gosh.
In other words, you were the modern day multimedia studio.
Yes. We were very much we were right up there, state of the art, bleeding edge. We were doing stuff like the best quality 22K audio that you could do for a Mac so that when you listen to his CD-ROM, the dialogue and stuff sounded great. I mean, that's the kind of work we were into then. Because like any other business, the recording studio business works like this. You have your busy periods and then you have nothing. And that nothing can last 3 months. And you have to figure out some way to get business. So you have to do as many different kinds of work that you can. So some of our work was doing multimedia stuff for phone setup. So we would have a company come in that had a phone tree. So we would record all the dialogue for the phone tree and get all the files set up for them to send to the company that would set up all their phone trees. So we would do the phone tree recording.
Sure.
We would do multimedia dialogue for CD-ROMs for Electronic Arts. We did Madeline and the Puppet Show.
So,
which was a really, really big CD-ROM back in the day. Christopher Plummer was the vocalist, one of the voices on it. I ended up Steven, the guy from Sound of Music. Christopher Palmer, right? Is that his name?
The old dude? I have to plead ignorance, yeah.
Anyways,
I think
his voice.
I think you're right. It's Christopher Plummer. However,
Plummer, thank you. Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So one of the cool things about the Vancouver studio that we had, Utopia Parkway Music, the big one with the multimedia stuff, is I did a lot of mastering at the time.
Right.
And that studio building, 2182 West 12th Avenue in Vancouver, had 7 different recording studios in it.
That's
so
impressive.
If you can imagine, it was great. We had every format between my studio, George's place. There was Blue Wave was there, Hipposonic was there. Hipposonic was a big SSL console. Blue Wave was a Neve. Nice. And then they ended up having another Neve. So, I mean, we had some really big ass, huge boards around. And then we had some smaller studios and we all supported each other. It was a really amazing community. I feel so blessed to have been part of that.
That's
we were there
awesome.
for 12 years. Yeah. Great place to be.
Out of curiosity, how do you go from doing that to winning a Juno? Because you have one, like, what is for American audience,
mastering
is the equivalent of a Grammy in Canada is a Juno. For the rest of the world, I apologize for not knowing what the equivalent would be for your particular country, but the Juno Award is like the American Grammy. So how did you go about getting the Juno?
Well, in Canada, if you're part of the production team, and that means either recording engineer, producer, band member, or mastering engineer, then you qualify for a Juno Award, and I qualify for a Juno Award because I mastered that record.
Sweet.
The record was by Paper Boys, and it was called Molinos. And I told actually Jody the story a little while ago, and I'd like to tell it again because I'm really proud of it. Basically, what happened is in the mastering world, up until then, a lot of people would come in with references, and that's kind of limiting me as an artist, right? Because when you're mastering, you're trying to you're trying to make a record sound as good as you can make it sound, sure. Right? Mm-hmm. And in this case, they gave me a reference of a particular album, then I won't mention the album. So I spent the day, well, it sound for their record and for that recording, it was not a very good reference. They picked a terrible sounding record to reference their record to. It wasn't going to work. And after spending an entire day doing it, it didn't work really. Nobody was very happy when they left. And I remember the producer, John Webster, called me back and he said, look, George, in my experience, I've worked with most mastering guys that don't really have references. They just use their ears. So I want you to use your ears. And that's what they ended up going with in the end, was my ear version of their mastering. So I sat down, I remastered the whole album using my own sense of what I thought was going to be best for the record. And that's what they used.
Imagine that, using your ears.
No kidding. Yeah, really.
That's a really good lesson in there, in the sense that because you need, when you mention references, and I think this is the same thing that people talk a lot about, reference mixes and things when they're working on their productions, how everything needs to be comparable, right? Mm-hmm. You might love how, the latest BT track sounds, right? It sounds fantastic, awesome production. But if you're doing like a modern black metal record, that's a horrible reference, So and the same thing goes for if you're going for like a Hysteria, Def Leppard type of a sound, don't reference, even though it's still Mutt Lange, don't reference Back in Black, So
no, they do not sound the same at all. Wow. Yeah.
Right. And it's, so I think that's something that our listener can probably take away. It sounds so obvious when you say it, but you got to make sure you're in the ballpark,
Yeah, you are totally right. And it's a real struggle when you're a mastering engineer and people bring you references that are like that. And you try and explain to them, you're like, I'm sorry, but this isn't really going to work for your record. Here, let me show you what I can do with it. And, you spend an hour and a half trying to take their song and make it in magic, and hopefully they love it.
It all goes back to the fact you have to trust the person that you're going to for a mastering situation. You have to trust that they know what they're doing with their gear. You have to trust that they know how to use their ears, and you have to trust their judgment with your creation. Mm-hmm. And if you are the mastering guy and they're not trusting you, that, as you say, creates problems.
It can really,
Yeah. And that's something that we've talked about before, Jody, where that's where, the communication really comes into play, right?
Big time.
You really need to have, whether you're the artist or you're the mastering or mixing engineer, you need to have that dialogue with the client of, first of all, what it is that they are expecting, mm-hmm. and whether or not that is an appropriate or even realistic expectation. And then talk about, if it isn't a realistic expectation, talk about alternatives. I think this might be appropriate for you for this, or whatever it happens to be. So that dialogue needs to happen, or everybody's just going to be disappointed, I suppose.
Exactly.
So let me ask you one thing here. So now, obviously, it sounds to me, George, like when you're working in the studio and you have this alpha board, when you're constantly getting updates and everything, that you got used to at a very early time in your career to problem solve and deal with solutions. So I guess it was a pretty natural step, I suppose, for you to get into the whole tech support thing. Can you tell us a little bit more how you started getting a foot in that camp as well?
That's actually a really cool story. Let's first tech client. Okay, so here I am. I'm working in my studio called George's Place in Vancouver. At this point, I'm with Pacific Songwriters, and we're downtown Vancouver in this little studio space. So it's a room, a little office room. What happens is a professional songwriting team comes into my recording studio. One guy's name is John Webster, and John had written Heaven in Your Eyes with Loverboy and Ann Wilson for that movie, the Top Gun.
Oh, big hit there, right?
Yeah, that was a huge hit. So John comes in. John wrote this song, and he comes in with Brian McLeod. Brian McLeod is co-written with a band called Chilliwack in Vancouver. They had a big hit record and a lot of Canadian hit singles. Anyways, so they're in, and they're writing in my studio, and they leave. And about 2 weeks later at my house, I suddenly get a phone call, and I'm sitting there with some friends, and we're all gabbing away. And suddenly I'm like, everybody be quiet, be quiet. I'm answering this phone call. I'm talking to this person. Well, it was Brian McLeod, and Brian liked my studio so much that he wanted my help in building or consulting with the design of my studio in his boat, because he had a boat called Gone, Gone, Gone that he had received royalties from, and that was his house. So he wanted to put a studio in his house. So my first ever tech gig was consulting with a hit songwriter with the recording equipment that I had in my studio, which he loved. He just loved my studio so much. He was like, it was perfect. It was like a great little board. Everything worked. I love it. I need to have exactly what you have. So basically that's how I got in the tech support business.
So
was consulting with him.
Straight. Was it the Soundcraft that went on a boat?
No. It was actually a Tascam.
Oh, okay.
It was Tascam, DCM 200, I think it was called.
I'm just thinking because the fact like a full-size console board on a boat, that must be a big boat.
No, but it was a big boat. It was a big enough boat. I mean, this console was 4.5 feet, 5 feet, 3 feet by 5 feet. Yeah, it was a pretty big console.
For the Tascam, you're saying?
Yeah, for the Tascam. Yeah, it was a 20 input console, inline, I think. Mine had been customized by the guy who had owned it before me. So I bought it from the music store. They'd gotten it as a trade from another hit songwriter dude. And I bought it because it had been recapped and it sounded way better than the original factory board did, right?
Sweet.
So of course I had to tell this to this other gentleman who had his all done capped that way too. But so that's how I got involved. Basically, that was one of the things. I had a friend who worked for the company that did the multi-port MIDI interface, and they needed somebody who had experience. By then, I'd been running multi-port MIDI interfaces by Mark of the Unicorn, because Mark of the Unicorn had released them, and Opcode had released them. So, I mean, I had experience running all this bleeding edge technology right from the beginning. I had one of the first multi-track recording systems, an audio media card. Then we had a Pro Tools card. Then we had an 8-channel Pro Tools system, which was like 4 channels put together. It cost $32,000, guys, for 8 channels.
Think about that.
Think about that.
Yeah,
for
think
8
about
channels.
That when you complain about how expensive something is today.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that wasn't for the computer either. That was just
for the
Pro
software and the
Tools.
card.
That was just for the cards and the hardware. The cards and the software. Yeah, just $32,000 for that. The computer was probably $5,000 or $4,000. It was a Mac CI. Remember Mac CIs?
No.
Really? Oh, geez. Okay.
Sorry.
I've aged myself again. Yay!
I mean, I remember the first Mac. I just don't remember the terminologies.
Yeah, well, the Mac CIs were the first ones that came out that were more like a box.
Okay.
It came with a monitor that you put on it. It was like a desktop.
Okay, so it was sort of like what became the Performa series.
No, what became the Mac series. It was the Mac.
Oh.
Yeah, the Macintosh CI is what it's called. So it's a Mac CI. It was the first one with cards that you could buy that was just like a server. They also had the FX, which was the super server at the time. That was like the really $7,000 computer. So you could get the CI, which was a small one, which was a box, or you could get the FX, which was like a PC design.
Tower size.
It's tower size,
right.
Yeah.
So the thing that the takeaway immediately before we move on to the next question is that when you think about the fact that people bitch and moan about Logic costing $200 with everything it comes with now, do you shake your head? What do you do? Yeah,
I'm shaking my head right now. I'm like, how anybody could complain about Logic being anything less than I paid probably $2,500 for Logic altogether.
Back in the day,
because I bought it back when it cost money, and at one point ESX was an add-on.
Yeah,
Logic was an add-on. To get Pro was like there were 3 different versions, so you could get get the platinum, the
silver and the bronze.
And it
was it gold and
or gold and silver and
gold,
platinum,
silver and platinum, something like that.
Yeah, it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
3 different versions.
It's just funny to hear you mention, brands like Mark of the Unicorn. Well, Motu obviously, but like Opcode and things.
Opcode. I miss Opcode. Studio Vision. What a great application that was. I mean, to this day, I still miss some of Studio Vision. It did things. It had an algorithmic little composition thingy that it did that was just the most brilliant thing to use. It was, you could tell it how many bars you want, and it would basically improvise little musical bits for you, and you could tell it enter the variables, and it would create these perfect little sequence bits for you that you could use in your music.
The original Band in a Box.
Well, but it wasn't like that. It was more creative than Band in a Box. It was this little thing. You could use it for, I used to use it all the time for creating percussion, conga riffs that were more realistic than anything I could ever make up.
Gotcha.
Anyways. Yeah, Studio Vision.
Yeah, there we go. So now that you're even more into the tech support thing, so you have worked with Barry Manilow. So can you tell us a little bit how that came to be? Okay,
so in order to talk about Barry Manilow, I need to talk about another gentleman first named Michael Lloyd.
Okay, we'll flip those 2 points on our script here because we got
you
Michael
have
Lloyd
to.
here as well.
You kind of have to because
Michael.
Barry comes through Michael. So who's Michael?
Owner of Curb Records, right?
Yes, he is actually. In 2004, I did a tutorial on Logic Pro. It was actually Logic Platinum at the time.
Yes.
So, yes, way back. It was the first training tutorial on Logic Pro that was ever done. So that got me a gig working at West LA Music in Vancouver.
You there, George, but you said Logic 6?
Logic 6.
So this was Apple Logic at this point. Where was it?
No, it was eMagic.
No, it was eMagic. It was still eMagic.
But Apple took over.
That was Logic
at
7.
6.
They took over at 7. Yeah.
Are you sure? All right, I might be
No,
wrong
I'm
here,
not. I'm not sure. I'm not going to.
I want to say that. But
I'm going to say I did my tutorial in Logic 6, and then I did it again in Logic 7, and I had to stop doing the one in Logic 7 because Logic 7 was such a bad initial version of a piece of software that I couldn't get it to run functionally well enough to make a tutorial. I would try and set up my tutorial movie, and I would do everything, and I would plan it all out, and then I would go back and I would shoot it, and it wouldn't work the same way. Things wouldn't work the same way. So after trying this for 3 weeks, I finally gave up in frustration. I told my publisher, I'm sorry, this piece of software, Logic 7, is not ready yet for prime time. It's still too much alpha for me to do a new tutorial. Yeah, so I put that one aside. So the point is, I did the tutorial. The tutorial got me in the door at West LA Music, a music store in Los Angeles that caters to the famous and the rich with superstar people, come to Los Angeles, come to West LA Music and, work with the best in the business. And they are the best and were the best in the business until they decided to close their doors. So I ended up working there as one of their techs. And that's how I met Michael Lloyd. Michael co-owns Curb Records, biggest country and Western label in the world. But he's been a producer since the 60s and 70s. He was a child music prodigy and recorded everybody from Led Zeppelin to Donnie and Marie to Leif Garrett, Sean Cassidy, David Cassidy. He did a lot of bubblegum stuff in the 70s. He did the Chattanooga Cats, which was a cartoon on Saturday mornings in the 60s.
Nice.
And then in the 80s, he did Dirty Dancing. That was his big movie. And he's produced everybody and everybody. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. If you look him up on the internet, Michael Lloyd, you'll be blown away. So anyways, I met Michael working for West LA Music, doing a big install of a piece of software. And over the 3 days that it took for me to install this piece of software, make sure it was working, we became friends. Just talking.
Nice.
Because that's kind of how it is sometimes when you meet the right people.
Yeah.
Well,
you just
after
don't
the
shut
three-
up. It just goes going blah, 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 blah.
And it really does when you meet the right people. And Michael is the kind of person, I'm the kind of person that I always want to learn. Even today, I mean, I'm semi-retired. I still want to learn. I can never learn enough. Michael is the kind of person that is always happy to teach if you're willing to be serious about it. So anyways, what happened is after 3 days, I asked if I could mentor with him. I said, let me work at your studio. I'll take care of your studio and you just let me hang out. And he said, you can work at my studio and I'll make sure that you get paid, and you better do a damn good job or else I'll kick you in the ass.
And he's being literal about kicking you in the ass.
Well, Michael
I'm just
Lloyd
kidding.
does not tolerate fools, guys. This guy does not mess around. He is as serious as a fucking heart attack. Pardon my French. He is serious as a heart attack. He doesn't mess around. He's been doing sessions since
the 60s, apparently.
Yeah. But I'm talking, big sessions, real sessions. Okay. So anyways, how did I ended up working with Barry Manilow? Michael ended up doing 5 albums with Barry Manilow, which I had the pleasure of working on all 5 records in different capacities. Some of them one was a live album, which I did a bunch of technical work on. The Greatest Love Songs of All Time is one of my personal favorites that I was involved with, where we got to work with orchestras at Capitol Records. So I'm at Capitol Records. With a full orchestra. Barry singing was one of those pinch me moments that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. And yeah, I had the fortunate opportunity that whenever Michael needed anything for anybody, he would just call me up. Hey, one day, it was a Sunday afternoon. He's like, come on down. I got an emergency. We can't get Pro Tools running. Something happened. So I come down to the studio and I end up fixing the problem and meeting Brian Wilson. Because they were doing a Beach Boys session at his house. And Brian Wilson said,
Nice.
Thank you, man. You're my hero. It was like, what? So those are the kind of things that happen when you're associating with somebody like Michael Lloyd. So fortunately, because I knew Michael, it opened up all sorts of opportunities to different people, meeting people in session that I would have never met. Judith Hill, I don't know if you know who Judith Hill is, but I met Judith working with him before she knew Prince. And then went on to, win a Grammy for 20 Feet from Stardom? Superstardom,
nice.
the movie?
Yeah.
So the immediate takeaway on all of this is that, one, you never know when you are working with somebody who else they might know, and they will bring in to introduce you to if you are cool and not a complete asshole in the studio or in other environment with musicians. But before we get on with any more of George's stories with people that he has met through his illustrious career, we're going to take a quick moment for a break with a word from our sponsors. All right, George, we're back. We're going to start talking about, there's another band in your history that some people love to hate, and that band is known as Nickelback. What is your association with those guys?
Nickelback. Nickelback came into Vancouver as 20-year-old hungry kids. I mean, I'm talking hungry, but professional. Anyways, they recorded at a studio in Vancouver, and the studio owner at the time was a friend of mine, and they came down. I mastered their first album, Curb. So we had a really, really great time. I got to know Chad very well, and Chad, even then, he's went on to produce other bands in Canada since, and he was already had proper New York management lined up at the time. He was already producing other bands at the time, and I was working with him mastering some of these other bands as well. So got to know them. Yeah, serious guy. I knew from the moment I met him that if anybody was going to make it, he was going to make it.
Yeah.
It's like ding, ding,
because
ding.
he was, well, they had the songs. They were young. And I mean, even there was still 3 years before Silverside came out, Silverside Up or whatever, the record that came out on 9/11, by the way. That record with How She Reminds Me came out on 9/11. So it was about 3 years after I knew them that they ended up putting out that record. And I mean, I wasn't surprised at all. Not at all. And I mean, I love their music. I think he's a great songwriter. I don't understand why people pick on them at all. I think it's completely stupid.
Yeah, I have to echo that. It's one of my sort of like pet peeves I have. I'm not a huge fan, but that's not the point. But I think they get way more shit than anybody deserves. And I think the people that have strong opinions about it often don't know why they do. It's just like, oh, you're supposed to hate this band, right?
Yeah. I hate Nickelback. Why do you hate Nickelback? Because I hate Nickelback. Well,
Maybe
that's
it's
not a
because
reason to hate Nickelback.
Maybe it's the name that they don't like, Nickelback. Why would you want your Nickelback? I don't know.
I don't know. Well, that's a coffee house reference, right? Yeah. No, I believe it is. I think that's how
it is. I think so. Yeah.
They used to sell coffee, right? That was their day jobs, and when they came in
I
and
wouldn't
got
be
their
surprised.
coffee, they always get a nickel back. It was like $2.95. So hence the name of the band. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But there are a couple of things I want to touch on and bring up again here, George, that before we move on. But a few things that strike me with your story here, and that I think is things that people should probably take to heart. Now, during this last 40 minutes here, you mentioned not only Nickelback, you mentioned Barry Manilow, you mentioned Frank Zappa. Now, that's a pretty eclectic bunch of artists, right? So,
yes, sir.
The thing I think to take away from that is that you're either a lover of music or you're not. So don't pigeonhole yourself. Be open to different things, because there's always something to learn from other music that you might not listen to on the daily.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I think that's something, and be open to those opportunities. The other thing I want to bring up again is opportunities. Your path has taken turns. Like when you started out, you probably didn't imagine, hey, I'm going to start this so I can get into tech support. You know,
No.
It's the love of music. But when opportunities,
It's also the love of doing tech support, though.
Oh, sure, yeah, I'm sure.
Because that's also a whole specific job in itself, and the love of the puzzles of it.
Absolutely, but I'm saying that for people to be open to different opportunities and try things out that you may not have set out to do, but you never know what it might lead, and all of those things. So I think that those are things that are important to kind of hear. And also obviously, like you mentioned, Jody, there, when you never know who you're going to work for or who's going to be in the tertiary there of who you might work for. So you always do your best, whatever the situation is, right? And
actually, there was one thing I wanted to mention in here too, which is really important about when you're in an opportunity to be in a situation about this stuff, is to try not to prove to anything to anybody. Don't try to prove you're super to anybody. Just sit there and be a fly on the frickin' wall and observe, and don't try and prove. One of the biggest mistake I ever made was to try and prove to Michael that I knew something.
Right.
Well,
In
I guess
session with other people there. It's like my job wasn't to say anything to anybody about anybody in that session. I'm there as an observer. I have to sit there and observe and learn. I shouldn't be trying to tell anybody what to do.
So
and
I guess
that was that mistake.
A couple of the lines that come to mind for something like that is: 1, don't speak unless spoken to, and 2, let your work do the talking. Don't let your mouth do the talking in that regard.
Yeah.
Especially in that situation.
Well, yeah, when you got guys of that kind of caliber coming through and you're just there, it's like that's a huge caliber to be sitting in with, right?
Yeah.
So.
I said something once in session, and Michael took me aside and just was like, "Don't you ever say anything again in session. Ever. Okay? Or else you won't be here. Okay. No problem." I felt the burn enough in that one, probably 5 seconds, to know to never do it again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Never, ever, 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 ever do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Lesson learned quick. That's another thing.
Yeah.
Learn fast and don't change on that. Always be learning. So, George, since we've run a little bit on your career here, let's think about something a little bit more technical on this end, not just the tech support stuff, but what would be your desert island piece of gear that you cannot live without at this point?
You got to give me at least 2, because one's not enough.
Okay,
And the two would be a laptop, a Mac laptop, and an Apollo interface.
Those two items are you can't live without those two things.
You gotta give me a laptop to record on, and you gotta give me a Universal Audio Apollo interface and their plugins that go with it for me to record with, because those are my main set of tools. I mean, I use those.
The list is growing now. The list is growing.
You know, the funny thing here is that I have to feel sorry for Chris, because he's in short company on this side of things, because you and I are in that same boat of like, you know, give me a Mac computer with an Apollo interface and their plugins.
Yeah, that's all I need.
And Chris is like, but what about Slate?
No.
What about Slate stuff is good. They're all good.
It's okay.
No. I have Slate.
No, you know, I
have sound toys.
Jody's
I have
riffing on
everything.
me. I really don't care.
I'm just ribbing him.
The point I wanted to just kind of bring up, first of all, I think we three know each other a little bit too well to have like a serious conversation on this. But so any other interface, George, without laptop, you're out, right? You can't do it, right?
Oh no, there's lots of other interfaces I could use.
Exactly. That was my point that I wanted to make. Just like,
but these are the ones that he's saying he can't.
These are the ones
without.
that I can't. Yeah, these are my choices on a desert island.
Yeah.
But you know what? Give me a PC and Pro Tools. I mean, I don't care. I could use either or. Give me Cubase. That's fine too. Give me Ableton Live. That's fine too. I mean, they're all similar enough that I can jump onto any one of them, and they're all creative enough that usually, I mean, I wrote half an album on Reason.
Yeah.
Because I found Reason, it was easy to start in Reason, but then I wanted to have more real-time control than I had in Reason, and Logic offered me more control. So I moved it from one platform to the other platform about halfway through.
Yeah.
You know, because Logic is my guitar. It's, you know, Logic is my my guitar. It's my main.
It's your instrument. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Chris, you want to ask the next question?
Yeah. Biggest lesson you've learned through your career?
Always be positive and encouraging. Yeah. Always be positive and encouraging. People can achieve more than they think they can in the studio, especially with the technology that we have. And I'm not saying using auto-tune or devices like that. I mean, just using a technique like a composite vocal. You can take a vocal track, get somebody to sing it 4 or 5 times, and then just take the best bits of that and don't even tune them, but just take them and then listen to them, and you're going to get a performance that's better than what that person can sing to begin with. And they'll be able to do a better version when they learn their comp to vocal.
Sure.
There's a psychological thing that happens to people when they hear themselves. Anyways.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting point. And I have to, this reminds me of a story that actually you and I had together, George, because you ended up mastering an album that I did. It was the first sort of production album that I did for a local artist. And I had done the mixes, and I was fairly fresh, let's say. And I remember you telling me that this sounds good, Chris, you can do this. And I don't think I've ever thanked you for that, but that gave me sort of like the encouragement to kind of, oh shit, maybe I can actually do this. So thank you, George. Thanks for that. But that being positive is now being positive as well. Like it doesn't mean now I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but it also doesn't mean sort of like just lying to somebody just to make them feel good.
No. You don't want to. I'm not a smoke.
Consider my career.
Yeah. No. It's not about that at all. I mean, we are sensitive people. We are emotional people. We're in an emotional business that is unlike any other. And when we're recording, we are literally opening our souls and our spirits to the world to see. And it's one of the most intimate and challenging things for people to do. And yeah, they deserve to be supported while they try and do that. I don't want to support somebody. I'm not going to lie to somebody and say, "Oh, you're singing like Celine Dion," when they're not.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I've had people come to me and say, "I sound like Celine Dion," and I have to tell them in a very kind way, "No, you're you." And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
I got
because sometimes some people hate Neil Young. But if you listen to Neil Young, he's got a totally unique style and he ends his notes in pitch and blah, 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 blah. But some people think the guy can't sing. I tell you right now, Neil Young can sing and he can also not sing, much like Bob Dylan, who sometimes chooses to sing. I mean, Lay Lady Lay, what a beautiful song and what an incredible vocal. And then you take any other Bob Dylan song and you lay Lady Lay beside it and you go, why didn't he do that for the rest of his career? Well, he had a motorcycle accident and he busted his voice. But besides that, yeah.
Besides that. So what would you universally give to all the listeners out there to say, this is like my biggest piece of advice other than your be positive?
I don't know. I still have to stand on be positive because everything comes down to that. Everything comes down to that. It's like, if I don't feel good in the studio, then I can't do a good job. If I can't convince other people to have fun and to be open and to be free in the studio, then they can't be creative and can't find their creative potential. And to me, it all seems to be about that. So I don't know. Those are the only words I can think of. And even the biggest lesson learned, to always be positive and encouraging when in the studio, keeping negative comments out of creative process as much as possible. Because the second part of that, keeping negative comments out of the creative process as much as possible. I mean, I haven't said that part of that statement, but that's what I wrote down because sometimes somebody's trying really, really hard. And I remember in the past, I would be challenging to them. I'd be trying to push them another way instead of being supportive. Just come on, you can do better, blah, 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 which is almost like a backhanded compliment, You can do better.
Yeah. I think we've got another take in there.
Well, that's not so bad. Let's keep going is always a good one. And having another, but yeah, it's negative comments can kill somebody. If I've said something offhanded before that's just totally deflated somebody's self and totally unintentionally. So yeah, that was the other thing. And I learned those two things from Michael. I mean, right. I watched that guy in the studio with the biggest superstar session players in the world to a young woman who's just learning how to sing professionally. And he's working with her because he's helping another producer out, teaching somebody how to work in a recording studio.
Sure.
And even then he's being gentle and supportive. And I mean, these kids really can't sing at all. Why is he even there? Well, he's there because he's trying to help other people become better. And he's all these guys have that side of them. They tend to want to help young artists if there's opportunities to help them.
Sure.
Anyway,
there's a quick follow-up to that question that I would like to ask you. Have you ever been accused of changing something on an artist's recording when you haven't?
Never.
Interesting.
Never.
How would you react to that then?
I would laugh at them. I would laugh at them. I would say, why? Why would I do that?
Sure.
Yeah. No, I've never had that happen. Never. I've accidentally recorded over a part before. In fact, this one song I had a 12-string guitar part that for whatever reason on my Fostex 16, I kept hitting the wrong track. And I mean, I erased that stupid 12-string part over and over on this one song. So
you'd record it, erase it on accident, record it again.
I'd record it again. I'd record it and we'd be going to do something else. And I'd just be space caddying it and I'd go put it in record and then punch it in and, oh no, not again. Yeah.
Well, that's almost
my friend
as bad
Brian
as
Smith.
erasing an entire
my
album.
friend. Yeah. Oh boy, no. Oh,
I did that once. I was helping out buddy of mine in the studio and accidentally erased all the guitar parts for the entire album.
Oh no!
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
No, well, when I came home in that regard, when it happened, he was in tears and then explained what was happening. And it was like, oh my, obviously I felt extremely bad because, you'd hate to fuck up that hard. The interesting thing about it is after all the guitars were re-recorded, having been replaced at that point, he actually thanked me for it, because he said that the end result was actually much better than the original version. Yeah. And yeah, that's the one time where I made such a gigantic boo-boo that it was like, so that's...
I have gigantic boo-boos. Oh, dude. Oh, you want to hear my gigantic boo-boo?
What's the biggest gigantic boo-boo you had besides erasing a 12-string guitar track?
Oh, this is really... You're going to love this one. You're going to love this one. So... Barry Manilow, greatest love songs of all time. Right? It's Christmas.
Yes.
We're getting ready. Now, I have to take that record that's on Pro Tools and I have to bounce out the whole record. It's the stems.
Sure.
Okay? Now, there's some auto-tune on it.
Okay.
And it's corrected and da-da-da. Or no, was it auto-tune or was it Melodyne? No, it was Melodyne.
Okay.
So we use
Melodyne.
Melodyne.
Pitch correction going on, yeah.
Right, but Melodyne, okay, now Melodyne at the time put its pitch correction information on the internal hard drive.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? So if you wanted to recall the song, you had to move the data from the internal hard drive and you had to put it on the session drive. Right?
Yes.
Right.
In order for them to be able to open up that session at any time in the future. Well, much to nobody's knowledge, that wouldn't have worked. But as soon as you did that, what happened was Melodyne went and started to refer to the audio that now was on the hard drive, not on the system drive, and there were weird little pops started to show up.
Uh-oh.
On my lead vocal. All of Barry's lead vocals had pops in them because the data had been moved from one file to... Right. It took me 3 days to fix it. Over Christmas.
Yeah, I think it's a referencing issue with Melodyne.
Boy, man, I'll tell you right now. I'm right then and there. Michael Lloyd proved that I was an asset to him because he didn't fire my ass and tell me to get the heck away.
Because you figured it
out. I figured it out and I made it right.
There you go.
Yeah.
And he knew I would do that. He knew I would never abandon him. I did the mistake. He's told me not to do it. Mm-hmm. But I insisted doing it because it was the only way it was going to ever work. Well, I didn't know that it was broken. I don't know if he knew it was broken. Maybe he did, and he didn't know to tell me that.
Sure.
Which is possible. Michael's not angry. He's not that kind of person. He would never be manipulative like that, right? So it was obviously something that happened. Anyways, so yeah, biggest lesson learned, man. It's just like, yeah, things can screw up in your face so bad. And you just got to swallow your pride and you got to put your hands down. You got to go, okay, what can I do to fix it? And then you just got to get to work and fix it. And I had to fix that or they weren't going to get paid for the record.
Well, and there it is. So the big lesson to take away from there is if you fuck up, own up to it and then fix the damn thing. Fix it. So, and with that, I think we're ready to float on out of this episode, right, Chris?
I think so. Thank you so much, George, for being a part of this. I hope everybody's enjoyed this, listening to it as much as Jody and I have, no doubt. So
thank you.
Thanks.
I hope it's fun.
Yes. So with that being said, why don't we jump into our Friday finds and we start with Chris.
My name is Chris and I have a problem with amp sims. I'm a Soldano player. I have my old Soldano. And Neural DSP came out with an amp sim that emulates the Soldano SLO 100. And I was playing around with that this week, and I don't need another amp sim. I have more than I need, but I really, really liked it. I haven't played any amp sims that have actually modeled the Soldano to this extent. So Neural DSP, the Soldano has to be my find of the week.
Nice.
My Friday find. What about you, Jody? What did you discover this week?
My discovery this week has to do with Pandora, the streaming system. And this is probably not uncommon knowledge, but they do have a situation for artists and label managers and such known as the AMP system that allows you to go in, you can record radio drops and things of that nature, which you then associate with particular songs, and they will automatically rotate those things into playlists of where your music is being performed. And you can be like some big name artist on a giant radio station doing like, "Hi, I'm Sting, and you're about to listen to my song, blah, 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 blah," kind of thing. And then it will play in front of your music. And then you can do little advertisements and things of that nature. So the Pandora amp system is pretty cool. And if you are digitally distributing your music, it's probably a good idea to jump and grab your artist profile on Pandora to be able to do this kind of stuff to promote yourself. And let's put George on the spot.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. George, do you have a Friday find or something you have found this week that is beneficial in some way to musicians or recording engineers?
Oh, geez. Yeah, you're putting me on the spot entirely. I can't think of anything because I've just been recording with the stuff that I currently have. Luna. What about Luna?
What's the new version going to have in a couple of days?
It's going to have templates.
There you go.
Yay! Yes, Luna will finally have templates, which is really, really nice if you're doing mixing or on their show, they were doing hip hop sessions where they were able to import a track and have everything ready to go so that, super speed. So if you like Luna, that's coming.
All right, there's George's Friday finds. And while we've still got your attention in this extra long episode of ours, go to our website and leave us a review at insidetherecordingstudio.com/review. We now have 2 sites that you can do that on from that link. Or you can go to insidetherecordingstudio.com and sign up for our email list, and you can be like our current winner on our next giveaway. You'll also get weekly reminders about the Tuesday tips that we do, and we'll make sure that you don't miss any future episodes of the podcast. In addition to that, if you would like to send us an email at goldstar@insidetherecordingstudio.com with the phrase George, it's not really a phrase, it's the word, you might get something really cool back in your inbox. And if you have a topic of suggestion for Chris and I to explain in a future episode, contact us using the contact form on our website at insidetherecordingstudio.com, and it will likely become a future episode. And with that, I will say, see ya later.
See you, Jody. See you, George.
Good night.
Thanks for being here.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for having me. It was fun.